Hi, everyone. It's Elisa Prather with the FMP Four Questions podcast. And today I am joined by Dr. Amena Johnson, who is the Associate Director of the LGBTQ Resource Center at Georgetown University and graciously gave us time today. I know you have a very busy schedule, so thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
So today in our Four Questions podcast, we are going to be talking about incorporating LGBTQ DEIA practices at work. We see a lot during Pride Month of commercials and things like that for a lot of different companies, uh, allegedly showing their support for the LGBTQ plus communities and for Pride. But we just wanted to dig a little deeper today and get your opinion on how that landscape really shapes up and where we're doing well and where we can do better. So, getting into question one, firstly, can you let us know a little bit about your journey to this space in DEIA and particularly to LGBTQIA plus advocacy?
Sure. I would say that I've always been working towards DEIA. I told a quick story about how when I was 4 or 5, my grandfather took me with him as he was picking up people to take to the polls on election day. And he talked about the struggles of, excuse me, Black people in this country and their struggle to vote. And it really sort of honestly is where it started. And I went to college and I actually majored in drama therapy in college and trying to help people through theater. And I had lots of jobs, after that, but AmeriCorps was one of the first jobs where it started. I don't know how familiar you are with AmeriCorps, but I was in a program called Public Allies, and it's all about sort of diversity and helping people in public service. I worked for the National Conference for Community and Justice, and they focused on DEIA in education, in the workplace. Most of my work was in the education. I was working with young people around these topics. And so that's really how I professionally probably really got started working for the National Conference for Community and Justice. And then after that, I went to work for GLSEN, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And if you know about Pride Alliances in high schools and middle schools, at the time, they were the folks that were mainly sort of the national organization over those. And that's when I started getting the LGBTQ IA work and have been doing it ever since. That was 2007, 8, something like that. And I've been doing it ever since. And one of the reasons that I've been doing it is because there weren't a lot of Black and brown folks doing LGBTQIA work. And I felt that there needed to be some of us doing the work and be represented, especially since I was working with young people. I felt like they needed to see Black and brown faces that were LGBTQ and out and open.
Awesome. Thank you. So moving on to question two, can you let us know where you think there's progress towards equity and inclusion and where we are doing well, and particularly from the business standpoint? So you mentioned doing some work in schools and with youth and with a lot of different populations, but where are we from a corporate standpoint in America?
I think a corporate standpoint, I think HR does well with, benefits and that sort of thing. And some of it that they have to, right? Because of the laws. But even before marriage equality was a thing across the country, lots of folks were giving domestic partners benefits and, extending that benefit to their children and that sort of thing. So I think that is where folks are doing well. And since marriage equality, that's only gotten better. And this understanding, I know in some jobs it's still that way, but I don't think people have to be quiet or doing what we used to call playing the pronoun game when they talk about their partner, saying he when they mean she or she when they mean he. I think that that's become a lot better in the workplace.
So then the natural follow-up question to that one is, where can we do better? Where do we still have a ways to go?
I think we can do better. Kind of on the same end of that, I think a lot of times people are heteronormative when they think about relationships. So here's an example: parental leave, right?
Mhm.
It's men in particular, but LGBTQ people if they're adopting. If you don't see a person that is visibly pregnant, sometimes folks don't have leave for people who are parental leave for people who are adopting, or and or the people or the person that didn't give birth. So if I got pregnant and my wife wants to take leave, she might not be able to take leave. So
Mhm.
um I think that that is a definite place where we can do better. And I think the other place we can do better is when it comes to gender, when it comes to transgender, non-binary folks, and bathrooms and things. I've worked in workplaces. I've been to workplaces where there are single stall bathrooms that are still labeled men and women. um, I worked at a place that had a dress code. There was one for men and there was one for women. One, that's just an issue because I remember telling someone, according to this, I can't wear a mini skirt, but a man can because that's not listed, on his thing,
Mhm.
right? And so I think when it comes to gender and parental leave, I think we could do a lot better.
Thank you for that. That definitely brings up things to think about, and that makes me excited to know, as far as what I've seen as FMP's benefits, that we are way more inclusive than many companies out there. But I'm sure we still have work to do as well. So thank you so much
Mhm.
for sharing. And now our last question is, what do you want people to get out of this? I know we only had a short time for this and
Mhm.
more people can catch up with the blog, but um, to understand about pride, particularly in the lens of how there's a lot of commodity associated with
Mhm.
it, especially from a business standpoint. What do you want people to take away from this?
I think the biggest thing is that pride is not just a month, right? Like it's all year. I'm a lesbian every day of the year, not just during June.
Mhm.
um and I think it's like, what are you doing to support LGBTQ folks? It's great if your logo turns rainbow in June. Like, I'm not, okay, fine. But after June, what are you doing to support LGBTQ folks? What are your policies? For example, like I gave the example of the workplace I had, and my job there was to look over policies.
Mhm.
But the dress code, like, what kind of policies do you have in place for LGBTQ folks that are beyond benefits? Look at bathrooms, look at the culture of your organization. Pride is not just a rainbow. Pride is the language that we use. Pride is the pronouns and how we refer to people. um, Pride are the policies that we have in place. So I want people to take a deep dive
Mhm.
into their policies and procedures and see how they're supporting LGBTQ people. And I honestly think in 2022, it's not as much of the L, the G, and the B as much as is the T and the Q. Queer folks, trans folks, non-binary folks. I think not just in the corporate space, but everywhere. We've got a way to go when it comes to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing just a little bit of your thoughts and your experiences and your heart with us on this podcast. Once again, I know that you've got probably not a bunch of time. So we really appreciate you sharing this with us so that we can also share with our networks about how to make meaningful and also sustainable change and advancements towards a more DEIA future for our workplaces. So thank you.
Thank you very much.